All links will be in the description below. Many events happen in the world that don't ever really have a conclusion. From murders to UFO sightings, these are the top 5 mysteries that remain unsolved. Number 5. Coming at number 5, we have the Potomsky Crater. Now the story goes, in 1949, geologist Vadim Kolpakov set off on an expedition to Siberia, not realizing that he was about to discover one of the strangest unsolved mysteries in the world, the Potomsky Crater. As Kolpakov traveled deep into almost uncharted territory, the local Yakut people warned him not to go on, explaining that there was an evil place deep in the woods that even the animals avoided. They called it the Fire Eagle Nest and claimed that people would start to feel unwell near it, and some would simply disappear without a trace. As a man of science, Kolpakov was not put off by these stories, but even he was at a loss to explain what he found deep in the Siberian forests. A giant crater, the size of a 25-story building, reared up out of the trees. Up close, it resembled a volcano mouth, but Kolpakov knew that there had been no volcanoes in the area for at least a few million years. This crater looked relatively newly formed. Kolpakov estimated it around 250 years old, a figure supported by later studies of nearby tree growth. Interestingly, the trees also seem to have undergone a period of accelerated growth similar to that seen in the forests around Chernobyl. Since the discovery of the crater, there have been many theories as to what or who could have created it. Some people, including Kolpakov, have speculated that it might have been formed by a meteorite, although the crater does not resemble any other known meteorite site. Others are convinced that it was indeed a volcano. Many even think that there is a UFO hidden underneath the crater. In 2005, an expedition was launched in the hopes of finding some answers, but then tragedy struck. The leader of the expedition died of a heart attack just a few kilometers away from the site. The locals were convinced it was the evil crater that led to his death. Number 4. Coming in at number 4, we have the Bouvet Island lifeboat. Lying deep in the South Atlantic, Bouvet Island has been described as among the most isolated places on Earth. The nearest landmass is Antarctica, more than 1,700 kilometers further south. No one has ever inhabited the island, and since plant life is unsustainable there, it is likely that nobody ever will. Yet, when a British expedition arrived from South Africa in 1964, they discovered an abandoned lifeboat in a lagoon on the island. Not far from the boat were oars, wood, a drum, and a copper tank. The boat was in a good condition, but the expedition party could find no trace of any passenger. The boat had no identifiable marks on it and therefore could not be traced back to any nation or shipping company. Even more strangely, when another expedition was sent to Bouvet Island 2 years later, the lifeboat had vanished. All of the other objects found near it had also disappeared. To date, no one knows how the boat got there, or what happened to the people that were in it. Number 3. Coming in at number 3, we have the Hessdalen Lights. In 1977, Harold Dale was camping with his family in the valley of Hessdalen, Norway. Just after 6:30 one evening, Harold went outside to brush his teeth when he noticed something strange. 3 lights in a triangle formation were flickering in the darkening sky. The lights just floated there, the intensity of their glow changing with every flicker. Harold ran inside to call his kids to come out and look. A few minutes later, the lights disappeared. Harold had become one of the many people to witness the mysterious phenomenon known as the Hessdalen Lights. Records of the lights date back to the 19th century. They have been reported to glow in many different colors, including blue, red, and yellow, and have been observed floating just a short distance above the ground or streaking across the sky at great speeds. The lights were particularly active during the 1980s, with up to 20 eyewitnesses reports coming in per week. Scientists have been studying the lights for years, but have yet to come up with a widely accepted explanation. Theories include ionized dust, combustible particles in the air, and, naturally, UFOs. Number 2. Coming in at the number 2 spot, we have the Redpath Mansion. Another century-old case concerns the 1901 murder of Ada Maria Mills Redpath and her son Clifford and their luxurious Montreal mansion. Ada was an extremely wealthy widow who suffered from rheumatoid arthritis. Her son, on the other hand, was as healthy as a horse and in the process of preparing to take the Canadian bar exam. One newspaper speculated that Clifford couldn't handle the stress of the exam and murdered his mother before shooting himself. Another paper claimed that the widow Redpath suffered from such severe insomnia that she tried to take her own life. When her son intervened, he was accidentally shot to death by his own mother. Strangely, the coroner wrote his report on the case from details given by a doctor who wasn't even at the murder scene. On such evidence, his report concluded that Clifford was an epileptic and must have had an episode of temporary insanity on the day he and his mother died. Even stranger is the fact that police were never called to the mansion. The tragedy happened on a Thursday evening. In less than 48 hours, the burials were done and dusted. In a matter of weeks, life in the neighborhood resumed as usual. No one mentioned the murders again. Number 1. The number 1 and most mysterious one on this list is the Elaine Moore Lighthouse Mystery. In 1900, the only living souls on the Scottish island of Elaine Moore were 3 lighthouse keepers alone in the vast ocean. The day after Christmas, a supply ship arrived at the island. To the crew's surprise, the lighthouse keepers were not waiting for them in the island's small dock. After blowing the ship's horn and sending up a flare, there was still no activity on the island. A replacement lighthouse keeper named Joseph Moore was eventually sent up to investigate. As he climbed the narrow, rocky stairs leading up to the lighthouse, Moore recalled being struck with a sense of nameless dread. As he neared the door, he saw that it was unlocked. Stepping carefully inside, he also noticed that 2 of the 3 waterproof jackets usually kept in the hall were missing. Reaching the kitchen, he found the remains of a meal and a chair lying on the floor. The clock in the kitchen had stopped working. The lighthouse keepers were nowhere to be seen. A further investigation revealed the disturbing final entries in the lighthouse log. The entry for December 12th was written by a keeper named Thomas Marshall. In it, Marshall claimed the island had been struck by severe winds, worse than anything he had experienced in his career, even though the lighthouse was solid enough to outlast any storm. Marshall wrote that the principal keeper, James Ducat, was very quiet. The third keeper, William MacArthur, was an experienced sailor and a famously tough tavern brawler. The log entry ended by noting that he had been crying. Further entries reported that the storm continued to rage for a few days. Secure in their lighthouse, the 3 men had nonetheless begun praying. The last entry stated, "Storm ended, sea calm, God is over all." Though the lighthouse was visible from the nearby island of Lewis, no storms were reported in the Elaine Moore area during the days noted in the log entry. If you liked the video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for weekly top 5 videos. This is Fantastic Fives, signing out.